Right, so continuing with this couch project. So in the previous streams, we were looking at optimizing a high-res version of this seat to potentially to turn it into, let's just hide that, turn it into a game mesh. So we've still got those properties. 1, 2. So we're using subdivision surface modifiers to create a relatively high resolution mesh of a simple couch that we then use as the basis of a low resolution version, which we then heavily optimize for use in a game. So these videos are just going through that process, or these live streams are just going through that process of converting a high-res subdivided mesh into a low-res. So just so that we have a good idea of what we're starting from. So that is our starting point. Very, very simple mesh structure. So a lot of the shape is reliant on the fact that we use subdivision to round off the shape. So that's what we used to create our visual object in terms of what we're looking for, the look that we're trying to achieve with the low-res mesh. And once we've got this, we can then use it to create our game mesh. So let's just yoink, hide that. So reduce that, hide, 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 and then we want to seat low armrest. Now which one was it? Oh, that's right. We joined it all together because we're now in the process of... So we've done the optimizing. We've removed a lot of the edge loops that we saw in the subdivision. And now what we're doing is going back over the mesh, joining everything together and doing some heavy optimization. So we're reducing the structure of the mesh as best and aggressively as possible so that we can get as much use out of the mesh structure as we can. Let's just make this faceted so object, shade flat. So right now we're in shade smooth. That will just facet everything so we can see what we're doing. So basically the process is removing the subdivisions, and then once we've got that basic step in place, we can go back over the mesh, join everything together, and then optimize some more of the structure. And in this case, that means, so edit mode, whoops, face select, that means deleting viewpoint, frame selected. So we joined these together, but in this context, these are wasteful because they're not used for anything in terms of that being the underside of the couch or the seat. They're not going to be seen in game, so we can collapse these by deleting them. All of them. And then what we can do is create, so edge select a face across that gap. Whoops. So we've removed, so that would have been, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 faces, 12 faces, and replaced it with 3. This may not seem like a lot of optimization or adjustment, but in terms of multiple objects in a scene, all of these reductions matter because cumulatively it adds up. So did we join these together? Yes, we did. So edge select, let's do in fact, let's do it this way. And then if we want, because that could be a bit harsh, so this section is visible to the user. So we might decide here to keep this detail, but because this is hidden from view, this detail does continue under here, but because we're going to eventually be using normal maps, we can hide or obfuscate, so that's basically disguise this little junction here without necessarily editing this section to accommodate this shape continuing underneath the chair. We don't need to worry too much about that because we're going to eventually bake normal maps, and the normal map of the high res has this continue under the chair. So when we texture this, we can take advantage of that, so we can leave this relatively flat and unstructured, or well, undetailed, and it'll be the normal map that does all the work in terms of how the object appears in game. So we're creating the illusion that this detail continues because of the normal map versus the actual flat structure. And similarly, so this structure was placed so that we could get the detail that's on the front of the chair to wrap around the underside correctly, but we can do the same thing here in terms of optimization. So let's have a look at this. Face select. But we want to be so we might be able to get away with, yeah, so if we try this, so what we can do here then, let's try this. Delete these, edge, fill, edge, fill. Same with this. Delete, delete, edge, fill. We don't necessarily need to be hugely critical or hugely aggressive with our optimization, just so long as we get rid of a majority of the surfaces that aren't going to be seen, because they can be put to use elsewhere. So what we might need to do here is edge that, edge, face. So what we can do here is remove these. Do that and then close that, because what we can do is the face. So we've got a very awkward shape there, and it essentially folds back on itself. But what we can do here is vertex select, select that top vertex, double tap the G key and just slide that edge. I mean, if we wanted to, we could slide it all the way to the front. So hold Control Snap, and that makes that transition a little bit more comfortable, for want of a better way of putting it, which we can then solidify. So that is, where are my menus gone? Mesh, clean up, merge by distance. So this will collapse those vertices together because we have two in the same location. Edge, clean up, merge by distance. So that is now a single vertex. And again, the same concern or the same consideration. We're using the normal map to carry that structure under the chair. So we'll do that on the other side. Face select, delete, edge select, face, select, select face, vertex select, whoops, undo, double tap the G key or the toolkit, not toolkit, if we use a toolbar, which one's edge slide? That's edge slide. So click hold and you'll get edge slide or vertex slide. And this tool will appear. Just click drag in the widget, hold Control, snap to the grid or the increments. That'll snap the vertices together. And make sure that we are not going to select inadvertently any of these vertices that are behind here. So we're switched to X-ray mode for this. That just makes selecting multiple vertices that are coincidental, so they're in the same exact position. And then just mesh, clean up, merge by distance. So seeing as we've done that there, we can do that same thing under, where was it? Under here. So select that vertex, edge slide that, Control, snap, and see how that now kind of, or let's try these two as well actually. Whoops. That doesn't work quite as well, so undo. But this disguises that transition by doing something as simple as that. So we want that vertex. Mesh, merge by distance, so that is now a single vertex. Right, so, and if that, which it does, look still a little bit hard, so what we can do is edge slide and just slide that up a little bit. We don't necessarily need them, these two, to connect to these two. We can accommodate that. Right, so continue. There's another spot. What did we do there? Same thing. So we didn't clean it up. So select those two, mesh, merge by distance. Let's drag that. So we've got, just notice this. There is a face, a quad here, but it's concave. It collapsed on itself, and that's because the edge alignment between these two vertices versus these two vertices, so we have diagonal, or the option of this triangular edge that makes up a square face. It can either go in that direction or it can go in that direction, and when it's over a curve or around a what should be a curved shape, it can collapse on itself. So the way that we can fix that, face select, select the face. Let's try this without actually splitting it open. Hang on, let's move this so that we can see it. Right, so there's the collapsed face at the bottom there. Face, edge, we want rotate edge clockwise or rotate edge counterclockwise. Yeah, so we need to split the edge. Not split the edge, split the face. So select the face, face, triangulate faces. So that's Control T, and this will split it down into its constituent triangles. So Control T. Dang it, why doesn't the shortcuts work? Right, so that's corrected itself automatically. So that sometimes happens. So what we can now do is join those back together. Had this not done that, we would select the edge, edge, rotate, and that flips the edge orientation. So this is what's meant about the, so a quad, a polygon, is 4 edges, but it's not necessarily, the smallest element is a triangle, and the smallest element below that is an edge, and then the smallest element below that is a vertex. But in terms of describing a surface, a quad is 2 triangles, and as mentioned, the orientation of this edge or this diagonal defines how the quad is shaped when it hits these awkward transitions like this on this corner. So we generally want to correct those by turning the edge. So we split the face into triangles, and then we can edge rotate and fix that up. And then once we've done that, we can then select those 2 faces. So shift click, and then it's face, tris to quads. So that's triangles to quads. So this will turn it back into a face. And if it does that, so if it reverts, we might have to leave it as triangles, which could be a bit awkward depending on how much editing you're doing, because wherever there's a triangle, it prevents us from doing edge loop editing. So see how this, the edge loop tool, wraps around the mesh. If we turn these to triangles, the triangular shape, or that diagonal, blocks the continuation of that edge tool. But we might have to leave it like that for the moment because we've done most of the editing for this. But let's continue with some more. Vertex. So what we can do here is collapse these vertices together at this center vertex. So selection order is important for this. So we want this one. So this will either be selected first. Let's get rid of the tool. Or, so we then shift click the others, because then we can do mesh, merge at first. That collapses everything together. Or we can select it last. Hang on, let's just move that down there. Or we can select it last and select at last. It'll do the same thing. Or for a regular mesh like this, we could even do select at center or merge at center. Mesh, merge at center. Like so. This just removes a bit more structure that we can use somewhere else. Let's continue zoom. So that's a little awkward. Undo. Control Z. So let's try collapsing these two first. And what we might be able to do here, again, another optimization. So because this is relatively flat under here, and it's the same on the other side, so this is our outside edge, we might be able to merge these vertices to the outside edge and maintain that underlying structure, which again is going to be obfuscated by the normal map. So let's try that. Is it first or last? Okay. First. First. So that's okay. Let's just correct that. So I'll have to do a little bit more thinking on this. So we can merge those two first. So that's a shortcut key, the M key, M for Marty. Marty McFly. And then what we can do with this, double tap, because what we can do here is merge this partial edge loop with the back of here, which we haven't yet optimized, but we can do the same thing. So if we use this edge loop as our terminator, what that means is that we can then merge, double tap G key, hold control, snap to the grid, so that it snaps and locks to those vertices, because what we can then do is face select, just remove all of this, that goes inside the mesh, so get rid of that, delete, X-ray, vertex, select all of those. So those are the ones we've just collapsed together. Mesh, cleanup, merge by distance. So those are now individual vertices that we can now use to close that gap that we've created. So edge select, F. So we're going to get a slightly awkward shape here, but we can do a bit more cleanup on this. So let's just do a triangle there, and a face there. So we can come back to this and tidy it up properly. But that's what we've got so far. So that's a bit more aggressive. Right, so we'll call it quits there on that optimization. Otherwise these streams get quite long. So save as, save increment. But in the next stream, what I might do is try and get this optimized offline. So that's basically tidying up all of this, because it's a bit messy. And there's still a lot of structure that we don't necessarily need underneath this couch, because obviously this isn't going to be seen. But that will then mean that the next stream, we can take a look at UV unwrapping this and texturing it. So let's see if I can get this done offline, and then next one we'll be looking at UV maps. That's the word I was looking for. UV maps and textures. Right, thanks for lurking, lurkers. We'll call it quits there, and thanks for the questions and comments, and we shall see you on the next live stream. Yoink.